We really have a problem with this storm, and the officials are the thing that came after the storm. Video from Eustace's workshop just came out a minute ago that has made everyone question everything they thought they knew about Eustace Conway and his famous mountain home. What was found in that workshop was so upsetting that even experienced camera teams took a step back in shock. People thought that Eustace's workshop was a very dangerous place to be. It was hidden by tall pines and could only be reached by a narrow, overgrown road until now. What does the famous mountain man keep hidden in this strange building? The public was finally able to open the door to this secret room, and what they found inside will shock you. Click the like button and subscribe to stay up to date on all the shocking news from mountain men before we go on with this shocking reveal. You are going to want to know everything about this mountain man. Let's go to Eustace Conway's workshop. This beautiful thing is about 200 yards from Eustace's main house. It was in a thicket with old hemlock trees all around it. The thick layer of plants barely let any sunlight through. Since the workshop was built years ago, no one who isn't familiar with how a mountain man works has ever been inside. Eustace has kept guests away and even close friends and family even farther away. A lot of people have asked to be shown around the gallery, but a lot of them have been turned down. Eustace would often reject someone with a painful silence. He would sometimes change the subject to something he was more interested in. The building itself had nothing to do with the talk. On the outside, it looked way too easy. The house was made of logs and had a mossy roof that was tilted. The forest waste wrapped around the house like a coat, and there was only one door in front of it. It looked like an old setup, but that made it look even more like something from a museum than a normal house. The rare chance to see this workshop could have been caused by what? That will happen faster than you think. It was a very strange situation when the production team finally got permission to go inside. Eustace had been acting weird for a few weeks now. They had planned to film the room for a long time before they started. Eustace seemed to nod off more often than usual during that time. The crew said he seemed to be distracted. Many people who knew him saw that he kept looking at the workshop during interviews, and he would sometimes stop talking in the middle of a sentence as if he had heard something that no one else could hear. His normally sure of himself seemed to lose it right in front of their eyes. It looked more like stress now. No matter what he felt, it was clear that he was uncomfortable. It could have been anxiety. It didn't all happen at once. It took some time. He was starting to feel mixed emotions about his choice to let everyone into his workshop. He wasn't sure if it was a good or bad thing. He became more careful about how he moved. He would get up in the middle of the night or early in the morning and walk to his workshop without a flashlight. The people on the crew remembered seeing him do the walk-by, and they thought that the man was changing. It was hard for him to let go of the emotional grip this shop had on him. The things that were most important to him were in the shop. What did Eustace want to do that no one could understand? People around him had a hard time understanding the changes he was making by making this choice. When they went into the workshop that day, everything was as it always was. But Eustace's whole world was falling apart. He could no longer hear the birds, and the trees didn't seem as alive. It was very quiet as he led the group to the store, which made their nervousness even worse. Later, one of the team said it looked like walking into a place where normal rules didn't apply anymore. It looked like the road was longer than 200 yards. The group members started talking about how strange the events of the morning before they left on this trip were. Eustace didn't seem to be there that morning. The team and other workers tried to find him, but couldn't find him. They started to worry soon after. There was no way he could have run away from this one task, most of them thought. He wasn't seen or heard, so someone thought to check the workshop. When they talked about going into the workshop, Eustace was found right in the middle of them, like a lost piece of furniture. No one questioned his answer when he was asked where he had been during that time. "I've been around, all along." They went back to getting ready for the next job. As they walked down the well-known workshop's road, they all talked about the strange things that had happened before today. The silence seemed to be drowned out by their thoughts. Each man was stuck in a mental test that he had made up. That's how it looked until Eustace showed up at the door of his prestigious workshop. The old door wouldn't open when he tried to push on it. A loud squeaking sound came from the hinges, breaking the quiet. He tried the door one more time and was able to get in. Almost right away, everyone tried to get a sense of the room. What they saw wasn't at all what they thought it would be. It wasn't a normal place to store tools and supplies. It wasn't like any other office. It seemed like a more dangerous thing. There were faces all over the walls. It looked like hundreds of faces were spread out across the room. They could finally see the faces when Eustace pulled the window folds all the way open. The group was affected by this picture. It proved everything that had been said about Eustace for a while. In fact, a story helped this idea get around. One of Eustace's former students once told a story about how he would work all night making figures out of wood while thinking about the link between form and spirit. He said he saw Eustace take apart an old clock and put it back together with tree sap and leather bands. Even though it didn't make sense, the stories kept going around. They didn't know who this man was as they stood in front of the faces cut out of the logs that made up the building. They didn't seem to remember him at all. He had a bare floor and faces that would make any man run at the smallest chance. One of his apprentices asked him how he could spend days here. The man who made the workshop seemed to get more attention than the workshop itself. What did Eustace Conway do in this strange place? As if the memories and thoughts in the log faces weren't enough, a storm came up. A lot of lightning strikes scared some of the team, and one of them said he saw a figure move in the room no one else had been in. At the end of the workshop, there was one person standing alone. None of them had joined, even though they had come to film the workshop. It looked like the door wasn't there at all, and they waited for Eustace to show them the way. They looked around, both interested and scared. Eustace saw that no one would even get close to the faces. They didn't know that the room they wouldn't go into was the source of all fear. The same room made noise and slowly moved back and forth. Everything in the house looked like it had life to it. Eustace had sweat beads on his face. He, too, was scared. He had been using this area as a safe haven for a long time. Now he wanted everyone to know that part of him. He couldn't figure out why. It could have been the curse of reality TV stars. Nothing was ever kept secret. He took some deep breaths and chose to deal with everything. Everyone is looking through that door. Would anyone like to see what's inside? The men gave Eustace a nod of agreement and followed him, putting their fears away. This room would always want more from them than it could give. They wouldn't even be aware of it. In a way that looked like a ceremony, animal heads were hung around the room's four walls. Each one looked like it had been chipped and made to look the way Eustace wants them to. The whole roof was covered with dried plants that looked like they had died but kept their color. Somehow, they didn't smell bad. There were a lot of tools on the floor, but the patterns on them were different from anything the group had seen before. The form of the blades didn't make sense for making tools and didn't seem like they would be useful. The group was shocked and had a lot of questions in their eyes. What did it say about this person? What did he plan to do with these things? It went on for a while. As Eustace was preparing to lead them away, someone cut their eye on a part of the roof that the dried plants had not fully covered. When he yelled, "Look!" everyone could see that there was something up there. The group quickly pulled the plants off the roof with the sticks they had carried the long way while Eustace tried to say something negative. They no longer needed to ask him for approval. It was pretty creepy there. It was hard for the camera crew to get a good picture because every angle seemed to show something new. It was a complicated building made of stone, bone, and wood. When the lights were low, it was hard to tell what other things were used to make this. Someone on the crew said in a whisper that it looked like a plan. Someone else said it looked like a machine. A third said it wasn't either of those things. They said it was something else that didn't fit into any of the categories they knew. Eustace watched their faces with a blank look on his own. He was thinking about a lot of different things, though. He didn't give a good answer when someone finally got the nerve to ask what they were looking at. He just said it was work. The people in the group knew they would never forget this day. Life was better lived than seen through the lens of a director's cut that had been cut down. There was something else very wrong. It didn't look like the class was the right temperature. We didn't expect it to be stormy in the middle of summer. It was only in the green leaves that the cold felt like it could kill you. People could get the flu after leaving the class if they weren't careful. It looked like it was very cold or wet everywhere. That was the kind of cold that made people want to leave without saying why, since they couldn't decide. A number of team members said they felt like they were being watched, even though they were sure no one else was there. The cams caught strange scenes that a normal eye couldn't make sense of. The shadows moved. They heard animal sounds that they hadn't heard before when they were in there and were caught on camera. Those who were part of the joke at the time were blamed for the sounds as a way to make fun of them. The sound equipment kept breaking down and making a loud whining sound that no one could hear at the time. There were signs that the ghost had followed them through the roof of the place. They found a badly made shelf in a corner of the main cage. The shelf was full of dozens of hand-bound notebooks. The writing was very small and went back and forth between English and another language. When asked if the crew could look through these papers, Eustace said no right away and without any conditions. He made it clear that those books were not for other people to read. Not yet, maybe never. But for a split second before he moved to block the camera's view, they caught glimpses of pages full of drawings. Most of them were star charts and pictures of plants that were known to be dangerous and hard to find. Some of them looked like they were trying to figure out how to map the shop's unseen forces or energies. Also, the crew found containers full of things they couldn't name. Most of these things were powders, liquids, or dried objects. Eustace said they were all picked from the forest, and the way they were stored made it seem like they were used for more than just keeping dead or plants or cures that go away. The labels on some packages said the same strange language. Some did not have labels at all but were sealed with wax. One jar looked like it had soil in it, but when you looked more closely, the earth seemed to have a shimmer to it. When looked at closely, it shimmered, but when everyone claimed not to look, it went back to being dark and plain. There was a liquid in another jar that was both clear and cloudy. It could freely switch between the two states. In a third jar, there were crystal structures that kept growing on their own. This house didn't have anything that should have been there. It looked like nothing was at all like it was supposed to be. Everything didn't make sense. You are in for a surprise if you thought the scary items were over. It looked like there was a group of records made with old cassettes. There was even a barrel of wax nearby. Eustace told them that he had been recording mountain sounds for many years. Once he was asked what he was recording, though, his answer gave everyone present chills. He said he was recording what talks when no one is around. His idea of living and living things sent him on a long rant. He said that everything had a voice. At this point, everyone started to wonder when this man's mental health got so bad. Someone said, "It's because he's always by himself." Someone else told their partner, "Eustace has lost it." Eustace heard the reports and quickly turned around. He was done talking, but he knew how the group would see him. It was likely that he would now be treated like a crazy person, or, even worse, like an old man who was about to die. Even so, he insisted that the records showed there was more to nature in the wild than meets the eye. The collection was very large and was carefully organized by date and place. The labels and cases were marked up in that mysterious writing system. He seemed to have spent a lot of time and done a lot of study on this issue. Someone on the team was brave enough to ask if they could listen to some of the recordings. Eustace thought about this for a long time before deciding to play just one. Why would he want to lose? He had told them everything and left most of the story about the shop up to them to figure out. He picked out a tape at random and went to an old tape player that was sitting around. All of the people there wished they had never asked for that sound. In fact, they couldn't understand why they hadn't turned around as soon as they saw the faces. Why were they so interested in following Eustace through every corner of the store? They felt like something inside them told them to see the journey through to the end. It was hard to explain the sound. At first, it sounded like fast-moving wind through the trees, but the way the sound cut through the air was almost scary. The team happened to be so quiet that a pin drop could be heard across the room. One could see that there was a conversation going on, though it might not have been on a normal human frequency range. In reaction, they were able to find something that looked like a call. As their eyes grew wide at what they saw and some stubbornly refused to believe what they saw, Eustace smiled to himself. They would know now that he wasn't mad, at least. He wasn't going crazy from all the things in the forest. He made a note of something, and thinking about it led to a huge snowball of strange findings. The sounds got more complicated as the recording went on. As the melodies went on, their impacts could be seen right in front of them. Eustace reached out and grabbed something that looked like earplugs. When their teeth hurt, some people in the group knelt down and held on to the sides of their mouths. Some people couldn't see clearly and weren't sure what was going on. This sound, which couldn't be named or properly explained, had such a strong presence. What it does to people. He turned off the tape player when he saw that they could no longer back down from how they felt. Even though the recording was short, everyone in the class wanted to be somewhere else by the end. The quiet that followed this listening was almost too much to bear. The men looked like they were rooted in the workshop, but they were really far away in society and had no plans to return. After hearing the recording, some team members said they had very vivid dreams. In my dreams, I would walk through woods that weren't quite right, where everything grew the wrong way. As the crew got ready to leave, someone saw something that they had missed during the original shock of entry. There was a date carved into the wall next to the door. It was bigger than any other sign and exactly at eye level for someone Eustace's height. It wasn't written in numbers, but it was carved in a way that made sense once you knew what you were looking at. On that date, 3 weeks would have passed since the day of shooting. One English word, completion, was carved below it. It was new to carve. This meant Eustace put this mark on the ship just days or even hours after letting the crew in. He had been with them the whole time, so it didn't make sense. When asked about this and what it meant and what would be done, he changed his whole attitude. All of the friendliness he had shown before disappeared all of a sudden. He pushed them out of the way with such force and haste. He told them over and over that they had seen enough. Everyone would agree after seeing what they did. He said that viewers didn't have to understand everything. The door was locked and shut. At the same time, team members were sure they heard something moving inside, like things were moving back to where they belonged. As they walked back to the main cabin, the crew tried to ask Eustace more questions, but he was too quiet. When he got back to the cabin, he told the production team nicely but strongly that they had to leave Turtle Island right away. That day, and maybe for a while after that, there would be no more shooting. As he helped them get their gear and walk them to their cars, his hands shook a little. They were excited to leave, but they also had a thought. What would this man do without them? They were scared of what the forest might do to him. Once they knew what they had seen and heard, they didn't want to stay there unless they had to. In the weeks and days after the workshop visit, strange news started to come from people who lived near Eustace's land. In the bush, people saw strange lights and heard sounds that didn't sound like animals. People who had lived in the area longer than most started to say